On the morning of April 4th, 2009, a worn-out 1991 Harley-Davidson rolled into the parking lot of Hal's Harley-Davidson in New Berlin, Wisconsin, with 300 people waiting for it, flags flying, and a police-style escort of veterans riding ahead of it. And at the exact moment the front tire crossed into that lot, the odometer rolled over to all zeros. 1 million miles, not a fleet of bikes, not a lifetime spread across a dozen machines. One man, one motorcycle, 1 million documented miles, backed by a shoebox archive of gas receipts and repair records 18 years deep. The man in the saddle was a 60-year-old Marine combat veteran and former state senator named Dave Zien, and the machine under him was the same FXRT Sport Glide he had bought brand new in 1991. No motorcycle in the history of Harley-Davidson had ever done this. No rider had ever done this. The company would take that bike, put it in a museum, put the man in its Hall of Fame, and hand him a new machine on the spot, because what rolled into that parking lot was worth more to Harley-Davidson than anything it had ever built in its own factory. And here's the part that will stay with you long after this video ends. The million miles was not even the remarkable part. The remarkable part is what those miles cost, what they meant, and the fact that when the road finally took its price, this man paid it, strapped on what was left, and kept riding. This is the story of the million-mile Harley, and the rider who proved that the most durable part on any motorcycle is the man who refuses to get off. To understand a million miles, you have to start where Dave Zien started, on a farm outside Eau Claire, Wisconsin, at what he called the back end of a dead-end road. His words: he had a horse, and by his own telling, the horse could not go fast enough. So he got a motorcycle. That is the entire origin story, and it is perfect, because everything that follows is just that sentence repeated for 60 years at higher speeds. A restlessness born on a dead-end road, and a machine that turned dead ends into starting points. The restlessness took him a long way from the farm. In 1968, Zien joined the United States Marine Corps and went to Vietnam, where he served as a point man in a reconnaissance unit, which for those who do not know military life, means he was the man who walked first, the man in front, the one who finds what is waiting before anyone else does. He was promoted to sergeant, he came home with a Purple Heart, and like a lot of men of his generation, he came home to a country that did not particularly want to talk about where he had been. What he did with that is the first clue to who he is. He did not disappear into himself. He went to work for the Veterans Administration as an outreach director, helping other returning veterans get loans for homes and schooling, and he spent the rest of his life dragging his brothers along with him into jobs, into housing, into memory. Keep that in your pocket as this story goes on, because with Zien, the riding and the serving were never two different things. The motorcycle was how he carried the flag, sometimes literally. This is a man who ran 11 marathons and carried a full-size American flag through 7 of them, 26 miles at a time, in honor of fallen veterans and prisoners of war. That is not a detail you need for a motorcycle story, except it is, because it tells you what kind of engine was actually powering that FXRT. Harley-Davidson built the machine. Something else entirely built the rider. In 1988, the restless farm kid did something nobody saw coming. He got elected. Dave Zien became a Wisconsin state senator, and he held that seat for 18 years, and the state capitol in Madison had never seen anything quite like him. He was, by the accounts of the time, the first lawmaker to ride a motorcycle to the Capitol, parking it where the sensible sedans parked, walking into the marble halls in riding gear. And once inside, he did not leave the riders at the door. Zien authored motorcycle legislation session after session, and he became one of the loudest voices in one of the defining rider rights battles of the era, the helmet law fight. You can hold whatever opinion you want about helmets, and plenty of riders hold strong ones in both directions, but as a piece of political history, what happened in Wisconsin was remarkable. Zien helped lead the protests and the legislative campaign that made Wisconsin the only state in the nation to override a governor's veto on the issue. Whatever you think of the cause, understand what it meant to the people in it. For Wisconsin riders, there was a man inside the building who was one of them, who arrived on 2 wheels, who fought like it mattered. They did not have a lobbyist. They had a point man, same job he had in the jungle: walk first. And all through those Senate years, through the sessions and the campaigns and the veterans events, the odometer on the 91 FXRT kept climbing at a rate that defies ordinary explanation. Because here is where this story leaves normal and never comes back. Most riders in America put somewhere around 3,000 to 5,000 miles on a motorcycle in a year. A serious rider, a passionate one, might do 10 or 15,000. Dave Zien had 3 separate years in which he rode more than 100,000 miles. Sit with that number. 100,000 miles in a single year is 270 miles a day, every single day, through a Wisconsin winter with no days off. He did that 3 times. He once rode 31,000 miles in 31 days, a 1,000-mile day repeated for a month straight. He holds an iron butt endurance record from a run of roughly 11,000 miles in 11 days. 6,200 miles in 5 days. These are not riding statistics. These are the numbers of a man conducting an experiment on the outer limits of what a human being and a machine can do together, and refusing to publish a conclusion, because concluding would mean stopping. And through all of it, the same bike. That is the detail that separates this from every other endurance story in motorcycling. Anyone can burn through machines. Zien kept the FXRT, year after year, rebuild after rebuild, because somewhere along the way, the bike stopped being equipment and became a partner. When the million finally rolled up, the record keepers went over that motorcycle like archaeologists, and what they found tells you everything about the relationship. After a million miles, the FXRT still wore its original fenders, original gas tank, original oil tank, original handlebars, original triple tree, original primary and transmission cases. The gears inside had been replaced, the engine had been gone through more times than anyone bothered counting, but the bones, the body, the thing that made it that bike, and not some other bike, all original. He did not ride a Harley for 1,000,000 miles. He rode this Harley for 1,000,000 miles. There is a difference, and every rider watching this knows exactly what that difference is. So we come back to that April morning in 2009. The math had been done in advance, the way Zien always did it, precisely, obsessively. He and a riding partner spent the morning looping the hills of Waukesha County, burning down the final 30 miles, and they timed their arrival at the staging area with exactly 2 miles remaining, which happened to be the exact distance to the front door of Hal's Harley-Davidson. The Patriot Guard riders, the veterans escort group that stands flag lines at military funerals, rode ahead of him with the colors flying. 300 people cheered him into the lot, and the odometer, in front of witnesses, rolled to all zeros at the door. 18 years, 1 motorcycle, 1,000,000 miles, documented down to the gas receipt, finished with the precision of a recon man who always knew exactly where he was on the map. Harley-Davidson understood immediately what had just happened. The company handed Zien the keys to a brand new Road Glide in recognition, took possession of the FXRT, and faced a question: where do you put the most important motorcycle in the company's modern history? The new Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee already had a display honoring Zien, and the company had inducted him into its Hall of Fame. So the decision was made to send the 1,000,000-mile bike where the faithful actually gather. The FXRT went to the Motorcycle Museum in Sturgis, South Dakota, where it sits enshrined to this day in the town where the whole culture makes its annual pilgrimage. Think about what that machine is, sitting there under the lights. Harley-Davidson has built millions of motorcycles. It chose to enshrine one that a customer wore out, because that worn-out bike is the single greatest advertisement in the company's history, and Harley did not build it. Dave Zien built it, 1 tank of gas at a time. The company provided the metal. The legend was aftermarket. Now, if this story ended there, it would already be one of the great motorcycle stories ever told. It does not end there. And what comes next is where this stops being a story about numbers and becomes a story about the price of them. 6 months after the celebration, in October of 2009, Zien was riding his new Road Glide at night when a deer stepped into his path at 60 miles an hour. He hit it square. Most riders do not walk away from a deer strike at highway speed. Zien not only stayed upright and survived with bruises, he did the most Dave Zien thing imaginable. He field dressed the deer on the side of the road, strapped it to the motorcycle, and hauled it home. The Marine, the farm kid, the man who walked point, treating a 60-mile-an-hour collision as an unscheduled hunting trip. By that fall, he had already put 75,000 miles on the new bike, and he talked openly about taking this one to 1,000,000 too. The road, it seemed, could not touch him. Then came March of 2011, on a highway in Florida. Ahead of him, an SUV lost control, crossed both lanes, went into the ditch, into the median, and came flipping back out onto the road. The car in front of Zien swerved. He got on the brakes and laid down 342 feet, trying to stop. 342 feet, longer than a football field, of a man fighting physics with everything he had. It was not enough. When it was over, Dave Zien was alive, barely, and his left leg was gone, 7 inches above the knee. 6 major surgeries followed. The Road Glide, the bike that was supposed to be the second million, had 230,000 miles on it the day its journey ended. The man who had ridden more miles than any human being in recorded history was 61 years old, in a hospital bed, missing a leg. And here's where this story asks its real question, the one underneath the odometer the whole time. Everything has a price. 1 million miles is not free. The endurance records, the 100,000-mile years, the decades of exposure on American highways among the deer and the drunks and the drifting SUVs, all of it was a bill accumulating interest. And in Florida, the road finally collected. So you have to hold 2 truths at once here, because both of them are real. The obsession that made Dave Zien immortal is the same obsession that took his leg. The miles gave him everything, his identity, his purpose, his place in history, and the miles maimed him. You cannot celebrate one half of that ledger and ignore the other. Any honest telling of this story has to admit that the line between devotion and self-destruction is thinner than a tire's contact patch, and Zien spent 50 years riding directly on it. His family lived with that. Every family of every high-mile rider lives with that. The freedom is real, and the risk is real, and no amount of romance makes the second thing untrue. But now hold the other truth, because it weighs more. When Dave Zien woke up from those surgeries, missing the leg that had held up a Harley through 1 million miles of gas stops, he did not announce his retirement from riding. He got a prosthetic. He learned it. And he got back on a motorcycle. The last stretch of his lifetime odometer, and the man's total is over 2 million miles across all his machines. More distance than 8 trips to the moon has been ridden on one leg. When a television crew asked him about it years later, he did not talk about loss. He talked about gratitude, in the language of a man whose faith runs as deep as his fuel range, about God speaking through wind and nature and freedom. Incredibly content, he told them. Euphorically fulfilled, a man the road had taken a leg from, describing himself as fulfilled, because the road had given him everything else. You do not have to share his faith or his politics to recognize what you're looking at. That is not stubbornness. That is a man who decided, decades ago, exactly what his life was for, and never once renegotiated, not with age, not with injury, not with an SUV in a Florida median. The crash took his leg. It could not reach the part of him that rides. And that, finally, is why this story belongs on this channel, and why it might be the most important one we have ever told here. Because we spend a lot of time on this channel talking about Harley-Davidson, the company, the boardroom decisions, the betrayals, the strategies that priced out the faithful, and the turnarounds that begged them to come home. And underneath every one of those stories, we keep pointing at the same thing, the asset that never appears on the balance sheet, the rider who stays. The one who keeps the faith, whether or not Milwaukee deserves it that decade. Well, here he is. He has a name. Dave Zien is the rider who stayed, rendered at maximum intensity, the outermost example of the loyalty this entire company was built on, and has spent decades testing. Harley-Davidson has broken promises to men like him over and over, and men like him kept showing up anyway, kept buying, kept riding, kept dragging the brand's legend behind them like a flag through a marathon. The company survives its own mistakes because of a covenant it did not write and cannot cancel between a rider and the road, with the machine as the witness. Zien put 1 million miles on the witness. Then he gave it back to them, and they put it in a museum, and if the executives in Milwaukee are wise, they will walk past that FXRT once a year and remember that their entire empire rests on the patience of men like the one who wore it out. A horse that was too slow. A dead-end road that turned out not to be. A jungle where he walked first. A marble capital with a motorcycle parked outside. 300 people in a flag line in a dealership parking lot, watching an odometer roll to zero. A museum in the Black Hills. A highway in Florida. 342 feet of brakes and a prosthetic leg swinging over a saddle because 2 million miles was apparently not a finished sentence. Harley-Davidson makes machines. Dave Zien showed the world what one is actually for. So here's what I want to know from you. And for once, the question is not about a company, it is about you. What is the highest mileage machine you have ever owned? The one you could not let go of? And what did those miles carry you through? Because I have heard from enough of you by now to know this audience is full of quiet Dave Ziens. men with 300,000 miles spread across a riding life, men who kept the same bike through a divorce or a diagnosis or a war of their own. I personally think the Million Mile Harley in that Sturgis Museum is the most honest monument American motorcycling has, because it is the only one built entirely out of proof. But the museum only has room for one bike, and the rest of the proof is sitting in garages like yours. So tell me about the machine that stayed and the miles that mattered. I will be in the comments, reading every single one.